slip at your door, no name, no return address. Just an invitation to spend the night in a house that shouldn't even know you exist. David Ross thought it was a harmless prank, until Hollow Creek House called him by name and reminded him of a past he didn't even remember. David Ross wasn't the type to chase ghost stories. At 34, he had built his life around logic, routine, and the safety of facts. As a high school history teacher, his world was full of dusty books, not haunted houses. Yet on an unremarkable October evening, his life shifted the moment an envelope slid under his apartment door. It was cream-colored, worn with age, and sealed with wax imprinted by a crow. Inside, written in elegant script, were the words, "You are cordially invited to spend one night at the Hollow Creek House. Midnight, October 21st. No sender, no explanation, just a date and a place." At first, David dismissed it as a prank, but the name, Hollow Creek, gnawed at him. He remembered overhearing one of his students mention it, a decaying mansion just outside town, abandoned after a string of deaths. Local kids dared each other to go there, but most never made it past the gate. David told himself he'd ignore it. But as the days passed, the letter seemed to whisper to him from his desk. Wasn't he curious? Wasn't it worth seeing for himself? Finally, he rationalized it as research for a paper on folklore. That way, it wasn't foolish. It was academic. On the night of October 21st, he drove through the forest roads, his headlights cutting weak tunnels of light through the trees. The further he went, the less his phone worked. By the time the crooked iron gates appeared, his signal was gone entirely. Hollow Creek House loomed in the clearing. Its roof sagged, shingles missing like rotting teeth. The windows, many cracked or broken, reflected the moonlight like blind eyes. Yet curiously, the front door stood slightly ajar, as though the house had been expecting him. The inside smelled of mold and damp wood. Dust clung to the furniture, yet the floor seemed recently swept. Cobwebs were oddly absent, leaving the rooms eerily pristine, as if someone had prepared them. David set his flashlight on a mantel, trying to steady his nerves. He checked his watch. 11:59, and the old grandfather clock in the foyer began to chime. Its glass was shattered, and the hands were rusted still at 6 o'clock. Yet the sound rang out loud and clear, echoing unnaturally long through the halls. David froze. He wasn't alone. At the top of the staircase, he glimpsed movement, a dark figure sliding out of sight. He shouted, his voice cracking the silence, but the echo that came back didn't sound like him. It was warped, stretched, almost mocking. His pulse quickened. He turned to leave, but a fresh envelope now sat on the dining table. It hadn't been there before. His hands trembled as he opened it. "Welcome, David Ross. The house remembers you." The words sent a chill up his spine. How could the house know his name? He had never been here. Or had he? The candles flickered violently, and then every door in the house slammed shut at once. David staggered backward as the thunderous slam echoed through the house. Every door, every window sealed shut. The air turned heavy, thick with the scent of damp wood and iron, like blood that had dried long ago. His flashlight flickered, then died, leaving only the dim glow of the candle flames trembling against the walls. He swallowed hard, forcing himself toward the library. If this was some elaborate prank, he'd find the proof. But deep down, a part of him already knew it wasn't. The library stretched 2 stories tall, lined with shelves of rotting books. Yet on the desk in the center sat a single pristine volume. Unlike the others, its leather cover gleamed, untouched by dust. His chest tightened when he saw the name carved into its spine, David Ross. With shaking hands, he opened it. The pages were filled with words written in the same ornate script as the invitations. His entire life was documented inside his childhood, his parents' divorce, the hidden fears he never told anyone. Every page matched memories only he should know. And then he reached the last entry. David Ross dies in Hollow Creek House, October 21st at midnight. His breath caught. He checked his watch. It was 12:03. The sound of footsteps creaked across the upstairs landing. Slow, heavy, deliberate. David spun toward the noise just as a tall figure appeared at the doorway. It wore a cracked porcelain mask, its face hidden, its clothes tattered and blackened with soot. In its hand burned a crow-shaped lantern, glowing with sickly green fire. David's voice cracked. "What do you want from me?" The figure tilted its head. Its voice, when it came, was a chorus, male and female, young and old, layered like overlapping whispers. "You belong to this house. You always have." Memories struck like lightning. Flashes of being a boy, dragged through these halls by strangers in masks. The sound of the clock, the shadows whispering his name. He had buried them deep, convinced they were nightmares. But they weren't dreams. They were memories. He had been here before, chosen long ago. The lantern's glow spread wider, and from the corners of the room, more masked figures emerged. Dozens of them, silent, waiting. Their masks all cracked differently, but their movements were the same, stiff, ritualistic. The grandfather clock began to chime again, though it had no hands to move. Each strike vibrated in David's bones. The figures raised their heads in unison. The leader extended its pale hand. "The house is hungry." David turned to run, but the shadows stretched out from the walls, coiling around his legs like chains. He screamed as they dragged him down, his body thrashing against the floorboards. In a shard of glass, he caught one final glimpse of himself. His skin was paling, hardening, splitting. His face was no longer his own. It was turning into a porcelain mask. When the clock struck its final chime, the house fell silent once more. The masked congregation faded back into the darkness. And on the desk, the book of David Ross closed by itself. The final sentence now complete. David Ross has returned home.